Way back on episode 11 of this podcast, we had Ryan Duart, lead singer of Post Paradise, on the show. We didn't feature his music on that episode because, well, let's be honest, I'm still getting my act together. They're on iTunes and Spotify if you enjoy their music. Here's a sample of Post Paradise from the track called Here Come the Wolves.
Off to sleep so you won't feel a thing till they're tearing you apart.
Hello out there and welcome to the More You Know Co., Northern Colorado's podcast, cultivating curiosity and community connection, one conversation at a time. I am your host, Ivan Wayne. Today's guest was recommended by someone featured on a very popular previous episode of the show. I thought I knew how her story would unfold before sitting down with Andrea, but I was wrong. I had a lot of fun listening to the journey that today's guest is on, and I still have so many questions. We may just have to do a follow-up episode later on. Are there itches in your brain that possibly need more attention? Could you solve your inner struggle by looking outward into nature? Let's see what our guest has to say about all that. I sit here with Andrea Hall, and we are in the High Plains Library in Central Greeley. So first of all, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
For the listeners out there, let's start with what all are you currently up to? What do you do?
Gosh, I have lots of things going on at any given moment in my life. So I own Withers Whisper, where I'm a certified equine gestalt coach. We've just launched a new podcast called Touched by a Horse, and I have 2 books that were just released earlier this fall, so I'm working on promoting that and speaking, so lots of oars in the water, if you will.
Lots of oars, plenty of rowing.
Yes.
So lots of free time.
Yeah,
Right.
I wish.
Yeah. All of this, I noticed that there was horse, equine mentioned here, but your journey didn't start that way.
No.
So let's take us in the way, way back machine. You were a criminal defense lawyer for 10 years. So how did this start? First in that realm.
I've been a criminal defense attorney actually for 14 years. I've been specializing in sex offenses and domestic violence for that career. I started my law practice right after graduating from law school. I moved to Colorado and opened my own law practice because I couldn't find a firm that just allowed me to strictly work in criminal defense. Most of the firms that were small typically wanted you to be part of domestic relations and things of that nature, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. I really only wanted to focus on criminal defense. So everybody that I talked to, all of the local criminal defense attorneys in Fort Collins basically said, why don't you open your own law practice? And I thought, well, I'm not from here. I didn't graduate from law school. I didn't, mentor with anyone while I was in Colorado. Like I graduated and moved here and I thought, who opens their own law practice like right out of law school? And I thought, well, I guess that's what malpractice insurance is for. And so literally I would go to court and I would listen to what the attorney in front of me said. And then I would stand up and say exactly that. And I did that for about, a year and a half. And then I left my second job that I was working as a waitress at night and was able to work in the practice full time. And I've done that for the last 14 years. until about 7 years ago. I was in the middle of a 5-day jury trial when my 18-month-old puppy died. And it was the first time that I actually got to experience what my clients typically experienced on a regular basis in the criminal justice system. The judge was very unsympathetic to me. My dog was passing during the 5 days of the trial. The morning of closing arguments, my dog died. And I called the court clerk and said, I need some time. Can you just send the jury home, send them go get breakfast, do whatever, until I can come in the afternoon? I haven't prepped a closing argument. I mean, nothing. They knew what I was struggling with the whole day, the whole time I was in trial. And so at that point in time, the judge said, no, you basically have 30 minutes to get to court, and that's that. And so I, of course, rushed to court. And when I got done, I said, what am I killing myself for? Because at the end of the day, my clients typically don't care about my personal life. They only care if I'm going to keep them out of jail. Nobody sends me, baby announcements or Merry Christmas cards or anything of that nature. In fact, I'm lucky if they pay their bill on time. And if you lose, then you're the worst lawyer that they've ever had. And so I said, I need to take some time away. So it was at that point in time that I left my practice for the summer and I just played. It was the first time I had played probably in my life. I was always very determined, graduated from high school, went to college, got my law degree, and, was grinding it out. And so it was the first time that I actually really breathed and stepped away. And when I came back, when the summer was over, I realized how stressed I was. And I had been being told from my doctor how stressed out I was and that my adrenals were failing and that I needed to reduce my stress level. But I didn't feel stressed because where I operated on a normal basis was so high that that was my norm, right? And so when I finally stepped away and reduced that and came back, I was like, wow. This is huge, because it was the first time I could feel my heart rate change, my breathing pattern change, my voice would go up, a couple octaves, and I just was in ready to fight mode all of the time. And so I had the opportunity to step away from that. And in the meantime, I started getting physically ill. And so for this next 3 years, I was really on a soul searching journey. Like, what was I going to do next when I grew up, right? It was the first time I had no clue where I was headed in my life. And so I continued to search like what was going to be the next thing. And I, followed the breadcrumbs. And like I said, while I was away, I kept getting more physically ill. And so I discovered Touched by a Horse, and I started their equine gestalt training program. And it was about that time that I was getting ready to go into my second training program when I found out I had the brain tumor. And I vowed at that point in time that if I survived and it wasn't cancer, that I was going to do something much different with my life. Like, this was my opportunity to have a second bite at the apple. And so I received a Christmas miracle that year. I was diagnosed with it not being cancer, and they were able to remove the tumor, and it took me a long time to recuperate. However, I survived and it wasn't cancer. And so I vowed at that point in time that I was going to leave my law practice and help people in a different venue, if you will. So now I work with lawyers to help them create balance for their mental and emotional security and safety, as well as help them decide if this is really what they want. I think a lot of lawyers, A, don't realize they're stressed out, and B, when they do realize they're stressed out, they feel like there's no way out of this lifestyle that they've created. You graduate from law school, they don't teach you how to create balance, how to have a life outside of your career. And when I look at what lawyers are typically in trouble for every month, they're in trouble for typically 3 things: some sort of communication with their clients, trust account issues, and some sort of mental or addiction issues, right? They're depressed, they're looking at suicide, or they've picked up some sort of criminal charges as a result of DUI or domestic violence, or they're, drinking themselves to death. We're like the second highest profession when it comes to drug and alcohol abuse as well as suicide. And our profession is doing nothing to support that. There's only 8 states that require any sort of mental health or wellness continuing legal education credits, and Colorado's not one of them. And the 8 states that actually do only require like a half a credit or a credit in 3 years. Well, that's really not doing anything to support our profession. And so we really have a 4-alarm fire going on and nobody's doing anything about it. And so lawyers typically, have gotten adjusted to a lifestyle. They get out of law school. They're okay grinding it out when they're younger. Then all of a sudden, they're 35, 45, and they're like, okay, now I want a family. I want to have kids. However, they are so used to these 90, 100 billable hour weeks that for them to step away as well as the income becomes very difficult, right? They started to keep up with the Joneses. We're living in a very fancy house with a very high mortgage, and we have a stay-at-home mom and kids in private school, and, we're driving expensive cars and this lifestyle, right? So how do we leave that and go to a new career or find something that makes our heart sing again, right? Like when we're not happy over here, how do we get over here knowing that this is a guaranteed paycheck, even though I'm miserable? How do I get over here and create that same sort of lifestyle? And there has to be a growth process, yet they aren't able to see from point A to point B. How do we get there? Because the bridge has a big hole in it. So how do we fill that gap in and allow them to cross the bridge from point A to point B? So that's one of the things that I work on with the lawyers, as well as I love working with couples. Being a criminal defense attorney, I've seen time and time again the results of what happens in people's families as a result of divorce, domestic violence, things of that nature. And so working with couples and healing the unfinished business there and getting the children to be a priority in their life as if they decide to go through the divorce is huge, so that their child doesn't ultimately end up in the criminal justice system. Because as a result of what I've done for the last 14 years, most people don't end up in the criminal justice system because they came from a Leave It to Beaver family. We all have trauma. It's a matter of how much it is and who it came from, and an ounce of pain is an ounce of pain.
So when you signed up for this Gestalt equine coaching model, you were going through it for yourself.
Yeah, I really actually got introduced to this horse technique through a different modality, and I fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, this is the ticket. Like when I was at the barn with the horses, my breathing pattern changed. I felt into my body. My world disappeared. I could be at the barn for hours and it felt like 5 minutes. And I had always been attracted to horses. However, once I experienced that, I said, wow, I can take my love for horses and my ability to coach and help people and combine the two. And that's when I started searching out different techniques. And I found Melissa's, and I really fell in love with her philosophy, the fact that you were going to get a turnkey business when you were done. And she really lived by a lot of the principles that I believed in. She came from a place of abundance and not of scarcity, and that she was willing to help you take your business to another level. She didn't feel like if you got trained by her that you were taking business away from her. In fact, she's doing all that she can always to help the grads continue to make their success in the world, because she knows she's not going to be here forever. She wants to make sure that this legacy goes on, and she really believes in the work. This work started back in 1985 for her, where she took her knowledge of psychotherapy and the Gestalt work and combined it with her knowledge as an equestrian that she had done all of her life. And, now it's starting to get more popular. We have the Temple Grandin Center in Fort Collins at CSU. Now, when you tell people you work with horses, a lot of times their response is, oh, I know somebody that does that. Or do they get to ride horses? Or are you familiar with Hearts and Horses in Berthoud? Typically, people are now more aware. It's on their radar. It's becoming more familiar in people's vernacular.
And why do you think a lot of these modalities center around horses and equine presence? I saw on your website use this word, a clairsentient being.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So horses are magical just by being in their presence without doing any of the Gestalt work. Because horses are prey animals or predator, being sought after from a predator, they're very in the moment. So they're not looking at a watch going, what's going to happen 5 minutes from now or what happened 5 minutes ago. they live in the moment and they have to constantly be present and aware. And they have 4 feet that are connected to Mother Earth. They have no judgment to the attachment of an outcome, right? So they're attracted to someone speaking their truth. So let's just say I put you in the round pen, and for the sake of, a simple analysis, I put you in the round pen and you happen to have on a black shirt, but I say to you, what color is your shirt? And you say your shirt's white. That's not your truth. So you're not going to be in an alignment. You won't be congruent. And the horse will not be attracted to that energy because energetically the horse knows you're not speaking your truth. However, if you got in the round pen and said, I have on a black shirt, the horse would want to join up with you because that would be you speaking your truth. A lot of times couples will say, oh, my relationship is fine. Well, when the horse doesn't move, I know that that's BS. They're the best lie detectors ever. I would put them up against any trained FBI agent in the world just because they don't have an ego and they have no attachment to the outcome, right? So they will be wanting to come to you if you're actually speaking your truth. And so a lot of times it's that aha moment that the client's been looking for that they have not been able to get validation for, say in traditional talk therapy. When they go and speak to a therapist, they may be saying X, Y, and Z to a therapist, and the therapist doesn't really know if that's their truth, where the horse is going to immediately validate if that's their truth. And it allows the conscious mind to get out of the way. And a lot of times the biggest part for the client is just getting the client back in the present moment. We are such an instant gratification microwave society that if our hearts didn't beat and our lungs didn't take in oxygen, you'd see people falling all over because we're so attached to cell phones and emails and calendars that people don't even realize or have an awareness of what's going on around them. I mean, I'm sure there's been times where you've gotten in your car and driven and you ended up somewhere and you went, what? How did I get here? Like, this wasn't where I was intending to go. However, you were so out of it consciously that you were just on autopilot. And that's how we typically live our lives. So that is one of the first things I do with the client is just get them back into the present moment and see what's coming up for them. And then we heal whatever that trauma is from the past that's keeping them from the things they want in the present moment. And, I had somebody the other day say, oh, you only work with people who have trauma. And I said, well, let me be clear. I believe we all have trauma. Now, depending on the age you sustained it, who it came from, it may hit you differently than it would if you had been a different age or if it came from someone else. And you don't have to come from a family that was abusive or be sexually assaulted or had drug and alcohol addictions or cheating. Like, I came from a very normal family. We went to church on Sunday. My parents weren't divorced. However, there are lots of things that happened in my life that caused me to be who I am and where I went. I experienced issues with math in 3rd grade, and still to this day, it's a huge trigger for me, and it changed my life course. I went to law school instead of med school as a result of knowing I was going to have to do math. And I went, nope, not going to be a doctor because I am no good at math. I lost my dad when I was 17. That caused significant issues around, the thought process of when you love somebody, they leave you, relationship issues with men, different things like that. So it doesn't have to be something as traumatic as what most people think. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, an ounce of pain is an ounce of pain.
Was this transition to this model natural from 10, 14 years, the brain tumor? Did it feel like it was a natural switch or did it take some time?
Oh, it's absolutely taken time. One of the biggest things that I struggled with is the identity of being a lawyer. When you walk into a room and you say you're a lawyer, people just like, oh, right? It's like, oh my God, you're a lawyer. And then they want to, of course, ask you legal questions and all that good stuff. So you instantly have this credibility and you're put on some sort of a pedestal as a result of saying, I'm a lawyer, right? It was a transition for me to finally get to the place because, of course, my family said, you're leaving your law practice. You've worked so hard for this. And I said, well, let me be clear. I am, yes, leaving my law practice. However, none of that knowledge can be taken away from me. Once a lawyer, always a lawyer. Am I going to give up my law license? No, I worked too hard for that. However, the physical grind of being a defense attorney was physically taking a toll on my body and killing me. And so it was time to take that knowledge and figure out where else it would be better served. And so, yes, it's been a process. This wasn't anything that all of a sudden I just woke up one day and went, okay, I'm closing my law practice. I didn't. It's been a gradual step of moving forward, slowing down, of not taking clients. I still have a handful of clients that, will be closed out this year. However, for the most part, I am in the process of officially closing the Hall Law Office and moving on to greener pastures with my horses.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Right. So for listeners who may not know what the term Gestalt is, or if they're not familiar with it, how do you define that in your model?
Sure. So Gestalt is a German word that means wholeness, and basically it's a therapeutic technique that is used by therapists. However, you do not have to be a therapist to use it. So I've had 2 years of extensive training, and I'm actually entering a deeper 2-year course with Melissa. So by the time I'm done, I'll have had 4 years of training in specifically just the Gestalt. And that is way different than somebody who graduates with a degree in social work or a psychology degree or something of that nature, because unless they go on to deepen their knowledge and process around the Gestalt, it's very broad in college, right? So Melissa, that has been her mainstay as a psychotherapist, is this Gestalt work. And so she's used that in her training with the horses, as well as now this process that I'm doing another 2-year certification with her. And so basically how I explain it to people is we really come in, we rip the Band-Aid off the wound, I dig deep and get to the actual root of what's causing it. And so that's the other thing that's different than traditional talk therapy. In talk therapy, a lot of times you create an awareness and an understanding of maybe what's causing the issue in the present moment, or the relationship issue. However, it doesn't ever get to ultimately the root of it and heal that. And so what happens with the horses and I is it's a process that is transformational. They actually physically have an experience with the horse. So instead of driving down the highway and reacting to the same trigger, we've now created a diversion, right? Like you're driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour. You've had this experience with the horse, and you can detour the next time you get triggered by this, because now we've created new neural pathways in the brain that have allowed you to respond to the trigger versus reacting to the trigger. And you have to come and spend time with me and the horses about every 6 or 8 weeks, where in traditional talk therapy, you're there once a week. You're there for about an hour. By the time you kind of settle in and you wrap up the process, it's basically about 45, 50 minutes, because you have the beginning and the end that's really not doing much. Where when they come and work with me, it's an hour and a half to a 2-hour session with the horse. And I haven't seen a client yet leave that hasn't had some sort of transformation. They typically look like they weigh about 150 pounds lighter and had a facelift in about an hour and a half, 2-hour process. So, they have lots of ahas and awarenesses, and any number of things can happen during that process. So it's really transformational.
In addition to a lot of what you said, which there's a mountain there, but I also think, and anytime, so I grew up with a horse, and anytime I feel like, again, as adults, we are in the presence of a large animal like a horse, and you could draw a parallel to many different animals, but just that awareness that you're back in nature and you're connected again, I think is so powerful, because there's nothing man-made about that. There's nothing unnatural. And there's something humbling about being next to a creature who you can't have a conversation with, but is so massive.
Oh yeah. I've had lots of people walk out to the pasture with my horse, Bugs. He's about 17 plus hands. So he's huge, right? And they'll just walk up to him and they'll start crying for no apparent reason. And they're like, I was fine 5 minutes ago. Like, what's going on? So he has that ability to crack that and just allow you to be and release of an emotion. I have another horse that's a chakra worker. You walk out to her and she immediately starts balancing you from top to bottom and figures out what's energetically out of alignment and puts you back in alignment. So they all have their own unique personalities and have so much to offer. And because, like I said, they're such in the present moment and have no attachment or judgment to the outcome, they can just be with what is right here, right now, and allow you to heal in that process and figure out what it is that you need in that given moment.
And so this process or this experience has led you to author several books.
Correct.
And so what brought that? Which is just you wanted to engage with people on a different medium where they could read it instead of necessarily having to come out to the ranch, or where does that fit in?
No, it's just that it's so hard to explain what someone's going to experience. It's like telling somebody what chocolate tastes like. It's very difficult in a 5-minute conversation to share with somebody what's going to happen with the horse. So this is the third series, or the third book in this series. They are all edited by Melissa. They're called Touched by a Horse Equine Coaching Stories. And so I and 15 other people in this new book that just was released share our experiences, either of our experience personally with the horse or what our clients have potentially experienced in the coaching process. And so my story in this book is my journey with fertility and my dream of one day becoming a mother and surrendering to that, and explaining the process that I went through with Jack about letting that go and releasing the control, or what I thought was the control, on this dream of becoming a mother one day. And so it was the first time in my life as an adult that I had been attempting to get pregnant that I was finally able to separate that and not be white knuckling it and holding on for every ounce of that dream. A lot of times when people think that they're surrendering to something, they feel like they're giving up on it. And so people feel like if they surrender and allow, that they're not fighting for that. And so for me, it was the illusion of control. And so when I was able to finally let that go with Jack in the round pen that day, I've now been able to settle into my relationship with my husband and just allow whatever is going to happen. Now, I haven't given up on the dream. I still hope and pray that someday I'll get to be a mother and experience that. However, my anxiety and the stress and the pressure and the constant pushing to put a square peg in a round hole is down, And so there's other stories in there that are amazing. And it allows us, like I said, to really share the experience and people to understand what happens in that process with the horse.
And so now it seems like you are spreading out a little, you're fanning out like a tree that is in mid-growth. And so what are one or two things you're excited about now or in the near future?
Well, I'm for sure excited about the podcast that we launched about 2 weeks ago. And that can always be found on my Facebook page. And Manifesting Monday is something I always do on Monday, where people can go to my Facebook page and watch me live. I give a tip out for the week, coaching tip for their goals and their dreams and aspirations for the year. So that's always done around 9 a.m. on Monday. There's lots of free things on my website, and, we're getting ready to get our property settled so that I can go back to having our, weekly meetup groups and get clients back out to the barn. And, I'm always excited about speaking. So lots of things going on.
Yeah, you do a public speaker series. You travel around as well. You do a series of videos.
Yeah.
I guess that probably just comes with people hearing what industry you're in and just this process, and they're fascinated and they say, please come talk to a group of people for me.
Yeah.
Because we can't bring them all out to the ranch.
Yeah. It's a nice way to get in front of people, to share some information with them about how they can potentially, balance their life and figure out where they are and what's potentially going to make their heart sing again, and giving them information on how to support their relationship and figuring out what the next step is for them, whether it's private coaching with me or coming out and having individual sessions with the horse, or a combination of the two.
So this being a community-based show, you are in Eaton, right? This is where the horses
That's correct.
reside.
Yes, we have a 48-acre ranch there, and we are in the process of finalizing all the details at the barn. We have a barn up. We have a hay farm there at that 48 acres, and so we're in the process of putting in the fencing and the water and the electrical. So, yeah, we've been in a little bit of a transition, but that is where the work will take place. Yes.
Yeah, we almost did the interview out there until you said there's no heat or electricity, and I said, I think I'll opt for the library.
Yes, it's a little cold these days yet.
Right. So as we wrap up here, if people are fascinated, which I suspect they might be, how can they find you? Website, Facebook, all of that.
Yes, so my website is Withers, and that's WITHERS, whisper.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those fun places as well. And it's all under Withers Whisper.
And where'd the name Withers Whisper come from?
Withers is the first place that a mother nuzzles the foal after they're born, and it's really about safety and security. And so I really wanted people to feel safe and secure when they came with me. And Whisper, I'm not really for sure, like it just all flowed together. It actually started out that my whispers, or the daily inspirations that I sent out, were going to be called Withers Whisper. And I could not come up with a business name. And finally somebody said, why don't you just take what you're going to use for the daily inspirations and make the business name and just call them Daily Inspirations? So that's ultimately what I did, is kind of switched them back to the business name.
Fits well with the logo.
Yes.
Wither shouting would not be as good. I don't think it paints as good of a picture being out there and coming to a peaceful place in my life as I yell at nature. So, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
If you enjoy The More You Know Co., please check out our other episodes. We've had such a variety of interesting and awesome people, you never know what you're going to find. I've been in awe and wonder going on this journey around northern Colorado. Read the episode descriptions, take a shot, and discover our NoCo community. Trevor Fossey, always putting in the time to edit and mix these episodes. Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Russell Isaac Long, our guest on episode 67 of the show, makes all our music here at The More You Know Co. Thank you, good sir. We are on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in staying connected with us, or just to see bonus visual content in addition to this very audio-driven podcast experience. We will be back soon with another conversation, exploring and connecting the people who make up Northern Colorado. Until next time, peace!